Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our informational webinar this morning on an important IAOP corporate member benefit, supply wisdom, and the new option, automation wisdom, supplied to us by NEO Group. So just before we begin, I just wanted to run through a few IAOP items. So just for your information, there are some chapter meetings coming up this summer. Here's a list of those most immediate ones that are scheduled, and for ongoing concerns, you can get a more complete and up-to-date list on our website for upcoming chapter meetings. Just a couple of resources available to our members. Listed here, the OPBOC, our Firm Builder Knowledge Center, Pulse Magazine, the new issue just came out a few weeks ago, and our awards programs, which will be gearing up in the coming months. And just for everyone's information, there is a COP Masterclass in July that is where seats are still available. All right. At this time, I want to pass the baton over to Casey Alexis at NEO Group, who will start us off with learning about supply wisdom and automation wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Michael. And welcome everyone to the Supply Wisdom IAOP member benefit review. So we've got three great presenters on today's call. Joe Roboleski, John Bree, and Sandeep Suresh, and I'm going to allow each to introduce themselves. Joe, if you give a high-level introduction of your experience, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Great, Casey, thank you. So again, my name is Joe Roboleski. I currently work for Time Warner, which was recently purchased by AT&T, so I guess I now work for AT&T. And the role that I have is third-party governance. So I'm not a member of IAOP, but I'm not an employee of IAOP. I'm a member and I'm a user of Supply Wisdom. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the use of the tool or anything along those lines. My background also includes being a chief procurement officer in the financial industry, as well as a meaningful amount of time in management and IT consulting. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Joe, and thank you so much for joining us today and providing us your insights and expertise. John?
Hello all. I spent 12 years at Citibank, both in the U.S. and in Asia, running various programs and operations and risk. I also then spent 5 years with Deutsche Bank, the last couple of years as the global head, managing director and global head of vendor risk management. Prior to that, I've been in the industry for quite a while. So I kind of bring a perspective, and I think Joe will support that even more, of how we've actually taken tools and platforms and use them to integrate with our internal processes. So we found over the years that there often aren't real standalone solutions. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can integrate solutions into our program. And I'll pass it on to Sandeep.
Thank you, John. Hey everyone, happy to be here. I am Sandeep Suresh, and I manage and head data and analytics for NEO. And it's my pleasure to take the audience today through the capabilities of Supply Wisdom and speak a little bit about how Supply Wisdom works, what is the methodology that is used, and of course, how the analysis happens. I'm happy to take questions. There is an option to ask me questions, ask us questions rather. All of us are happy to take that while we go through this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. As I mentioned, having spent many years on the banking and the user side, I joined NEO in March of 2017 after retiring from Deutsche Bank because I was really impressed with the programs that NEO is running and this sort of unique solution that's out there called Supply Wisdom. One of the things we learned, and we've all heard this, right, for many, many years about, knowledge itself is power. Well, one of the challenges we have is how do we deal with that level? How do we deal with all the information? How do we turn knowledge into something that's useful? We've established that, and there are many programs we do that way. And what we're starting to realize on the risk side of the business is that we have to follow a suit that some other of our partners have done in areas, everything from marketing to sales to product development. Case, can we bring up the next slide? Okay. One of the things that we found over the years, we all spend a lot of time with risk assessments, and we also know the burden of risk assessments, both as a user, someone who is sourcing to a vendor, and then also as that third-party supplier, where you're going to get multiple questionnaires from various companies. They're often the same set of questions. So we've moved risk assessments as an industry to a much more effective program, and there are platforms out there, there are processes out there that you can use. What we're starting to see now is this need to move, and you can see from this slide, the need now is to move from that once a year risk assessment to a more, shall we say, comprehensive and holistic view of what's going on in your third party environment, and how can you use that information to target and have focused targeted risk assessments instead of every year going out and doing a full-blown 1,000 or 1,500 question assessment. Next slide, please. There you go. We have a couple of polling questions, and they're there for you to use. I think that what we'd like you to do is, if you have a chance, just quickly answer those. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them, but we just want to kind of get a general feeling. IAOP needs a feeling of what's out there, and how can we in the future make our programs more effective to deal with your needs and your requirements. So I think we have another polling question right behind it. There we go. What are the challenges? What are you dealing with out there? And that's not only challenges that you have externally, with the third party. What are some of your internal challenges that you face as we move forward? Next slide, please. So what's the situation right now? Well, risk assessments are basically episodic. We do them once a year. We do them every 2 years based on risk level that we've assigned to a third-party vendor. Sometimes they're very reactive. We'll hear something, we'll see a change, there'll be bad news about a supplier, and we'll have to rush in and do something else. We've often relied on the suppliers to provide information. Very, very little is done on locations. And what we have found over the years is that many of the disruptions that we're challenged with are sort of jurisdictional or geographic, as opposed to actually being a problem at that specific supplier. We then move into real time, and how fast are we getting the information? Is it continuous? Are we getting information over a period of time so that we can actually identify changes? Because in many cases, and if you talk to people in many parts of the business, even the marketing and sales side of the business, you develop products and you approach clients based on changes. And Joe will talk about some of this as we go through this, about how information can actually be used. So what we did is we realized there was a need. And 6 years ago, NEO Group developed a solution called Supply Wisdom. And it has some basic things. And you see them up on the screen, but it's, the things that are needed today. It is cloud-based. So in other words, there's no software or hardware. You can't have programs that require users to have to put in platforms and have to go through major implementations. It has to be continuous. It has to be cost effective, which is one thing. And also it has to go beyond just a control. How can it help the organization run better? Next slide, please. So look familiar? Well, that's pretty much where we are, and on the left side of that screen. We are just bombarded with information. I mean, sometimes you go on Google and type something in, and I love when you get those things, one of, 1.9 million. The information that's coming out in many sources is just overwhelming. I remember years ago in the AML and anti-financial crime business, you'd put a name in, to one of the search engines, and it would take you 3 days to figure out, which is the real name that you're looking for. So one of the things that we've had to do is we have to get people from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. And we've solved that with Supply Wisdom. We do it through kind of a structured program. You'll see it on the next slide. What we've done is we've taken all that information, those reams and reams of data that's out there. And what we do is we make it functional and digestible. We run it through our algorithms. But one of the things we use, and Sandeep will spend some time on this, is how the analysts, how we curate data, how we take this mass amount of data and we move it into usable dashboards and charts and reports that can be downloaded and used across the organization. So if you kind of visualize this and you move to the right side of the screen, Sandeep and the team will sort of take you through how we get there. Now I think what I'd like to do is jump to the next slide, Case. I think this would be well, back up 1 minute. I'm sorry. That was my fault. See, folks, if I would have had Supply Wisdom up and running, I wouldn't have made that mistake. But anyway, Joe, I think it's important that you can jump in now at this point and start to talk about how you've used it, the benefits you get, how it has simplified things, and also how you share data across functions within your organization and what you hear from your peers. So I'll turn it over to Joe right now.
Sure, happy to do that. Thank you. Yeah, there are a couple of ways that we at Time Warner, myself personally, use the tool that I found helpful and would like to share, and that I tell people just as part of normal discussions on this topic. And again, it is an important topic, whether it's just for internal security and regulatory compliance, and just to make sure that your business runs with a lower level of risk. So it is a hot topic that I find myself talking with others about frequently. One area that I'll talk about is really the real-time monitoring that takes place as part of Supply Wisdom. Because for me, instead of having our own team dedicated here full-time, we're able to leverage the scale and the breadth of the Supply Wisdom people and tool to bring that information to us. And I really break it down into 4 steps that they do for us. They help find the data, right? Because I know there's some times where we wouldn't be able to find it, but they're going through and scouring news lines and things like that to get us the information we need. The second step that's actually really helpful is that they assess it and they qualify it as whether it's informational, is it a low risk, a medium risk, or a high risk? And that helps do an assessment based on how I might be using a particular vendor or location and help me learn how to take action. And the third thing that's actually included as part of these alerts is the recommendation, which is very helpful. So I may have been able to find the news article myself on a particular event, but I actually have the benefit of Supply Wisdom and the analysts that go through this and say, here's the situation and here's what you should do to help mitigate that risk. And that's actually something that we found very helpful. And the fourth step is really on the routing. So there's some stuff where it may go to me because I'm the right person, but we have it go to other people depending on the provider or the location. And we found that helpful because if someone's on vacation or doesn't get to email, it doesn't need to go through that human step for routing. So basically the right information gets in the hands of the right people, and it's already been found, assessed, and a recommendation has been put together so people can take the appropriate action. So the real-time monitoring is one area where we've seen a lot of help. The second area is really on, I think maybe what this slide is showing, on the assessments that happen more periodically, quarterly reviews, and things that take place. The fact that it goes through an algorithm and does this assessment for us is really helpful, especially because it's not something that we made up on our own. This has been tested across lots of different clients for several years, so it has a stronger case in terms of the assessment process that goes on. And one area that we've used it has actually been where we've been considering either a new vendor or a new location. We've reached out to get some initial information that's helped us make a decision because it has the insight on the background through the Supply Wisdom tool. One other example I'll just give quickly about the real-time information. About 2 years ago, there were historic floods in Chennai, India, and it really didn't make the US news, and it really wasn't something that was showing up a lot. But we got the information, we got it in the right hands of the people, we were able to, based on the information, take some mitigating factors, and we're in touch with people to really take a drastic situation and help mitigate the risk. And it also provided some realistic view to the people here in the States about what the providers in Chennai were going through that helped them also deal with the situation more appropriately. So again, those are really the two areas that we found the most value, the real-time monitoring and the periodic assessments and reviews.
Thank you so much for that insight, Joe. So just picking up from where Joe left off, and also to continue talking up from where John left off, is as you saw previously, Supply Wisdom is essentially a solution that allows the user to get insights from information. So there is a whole process that goes behind how an information comes in the form of raw data, that the system captures internally, and how it gets analyzed and then reported on the front end to the user. And folks, all of this happens continuously on a real-time basis. And this happens by a combination of system-driven algorithms, intelligent algorithms that have a capacity to learn based on the inputs that are coming in, and on the basis of the curation, which is the second component of the process that happens by a team of dedicated, expert, and experienced analysts. So if I have to summarize the whole process, the system picks up information from multiple sources, and this could be from the public domain, the private sector, which means through the briefing sessions and periodic surveys that happens with companies and with experts based at global locations, across the world. And a combination of these algorithm-driven classifications and analyst-driven curation allows the system to classify the information, analyze the information, come up with a risk and opportunity assessment, and make the reporting to a user. And because of the continuous monitoring piece of it, this assessment is available on a real-time basis, which means as a user, you get access to the latest information at any point in time. You do not have to wait for the next quarter, next year, or even next month to see the next set of updates that are coming out regarding your vendor, third party, or service provider, or even the location that you would be interested in. So Casey, could we go to the next slide? This, folks, is just an illustrative example of the routing that Joe spoke about. So this is just one example of one feature of Supply Wisdom in terms of how you as a user can not just consume that information, but convert that to an actionable plan. So typically, the intelligent routing system allows one particular incident to be shared or even notified to multiple users, which in turn can be funneled depending on what category, what vendor, what location a particular group is interested in. And what we have also seen is, by the way, this is also based on some real life examples that we have seen from some of our other subscribers. One of those was what Joe just spoke to you about, the floods in Chennai, but there have been several other incidents like an InfoSec breach, which has led to earlier than required assessment of information security infrastructure of some of the key and critical vendors that were being monitored through Supply Wisdom. Casey, could we go on to the next slide? Thank you. So how exactly does Supply Wisdom function? What are the components that make up Supply Wisdom? If I have to summarize what has been presented so far, there are three basic components. You have the data that comes in from multiple sources and gets validated through a combination of algorithms and curation. You have the risk profiling, which, as you can see over here, happens on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's a quantifiable risk profile that allows you to run your own models, to overlap this with existing performance scorecards and look at this as the overlay or the extra layer of intelligence. And you have the real-time event alert notifications. Now, the data that comes in and gets assessed and classified into different risk profiles are divided into the categories that you can see on the screen right now. Supply Wisdom has 9 different categories for companies, and supplier is a term that you could use for your vendors, partners, service providers, third parties, fourth parties if required, if there is a critical work that is happening with a subcontractor, essentially any legal entity. Supply Wisdom has now evolved to capture information on not just publicly held companies, but privately held suppliers as well, including subsidiaries, wholly owned subsidiaries, other divisions that work for parent or holding companies. we cover suppliers across tiers, across sizes, and across service lines or sectors. So you could have, on the one end, you could have your typical IT, BPM service providers. On the other hand, you could have cloud providers, transaction companies, data processing companies, or even some of your critical partners. The system is designed to capture information, assess, analyze, and report on any legal entity. And because the system is real time and continuous, you can see that it goes beyond just capturing the financial information. You have service maturity of a vendor, how their client concentration risk looks like, their dependency on a set of clients, how strong their governance structures are, how well they manage their talent or people, how mature the infrastructure is there any risk arising out of existing partnerships of your vendor or existing alliances with other parties. Of course, their ability to innovate through thought leadership, and compliance and regulatory infrastructure, and the current levels that they are at, be it regarding lawsuits, liens, breaches, whatever other aspect that may be, that could be reputational in nature. Similarly, for locations, the system captures information across cities as well as countries. And the reason is simple, because when you are sourcing from a particular country, from multiple hubs, there are different dynamics that are being played at different cities within the same country, although some of them may be same characteristics. Again, over here, we were very, very clear that the system has to be real-time and continuous, which is why you see 8 different categories that goes beyond just the economy of a location, or the geopolitical or weather-related or stability issues. The system also looks at cost metrics, so that you have an additional layer of validation when you have somebody delivering from either a low cost or a high cost location. So you have access to metrics like labor costs, operating expenses, and of course the taxation rates. You also have insight into the strength of the legal framework, how easy it is to do business over there, how scalable a location is in terms of availability of people, the industry maturity, size and growth, and all of the other aspects related to it, how strong the infrastructure is, and if it is a location that requires a lot of physical travel, and also if it is a location that needs to attract talent from other regions nearby, the system also provides insight into the quality of life. And essentially what this also does is it allows multiple groups to consume this information in different ways. So to go back to my earlier example, if there was a security breach with a vendor, it calls for an assessment, but like John said, that does not need 1,500 or a 2,000 question based questionnaire assessment. It could be an assessment with specific focus on InfoSec, given that that was where the incident was. Similarly, if a location has multiple geopolitical incidents, then the assessment could be around business continuity and disaster recovery plans that a vendor may have. And that's how the system ensures a holistic coverage of not just the risks, but the opportunity side as well. Casey, we can move on. So there are, like I said, the 3 components can be consumed as 3 separate solutions. Casey can take you through this, and I'm happy to add any other points that Casey would want me to, or even feel free to pull in John or Joe to illustrate any other aspect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that overview, Sandeep. Really appreciate that. So, one of the great things about Supply Wisdom is that it allows you to kind of have an a la carte menu. So that way you can customize your monitoring service based on your thresholds that you have across your portfolio for your suppliers at your location. So for example, if you have some suppliers and locations that are less risky, or you've tiered at a less risky level, you've got the ability to do to access our alerts level service. And so this is great because it's an alert level service that is negative, positive, and predictive news event alerts. They are not aggregated. So this is important because unlike a Google search where you would just type in some keywords, Sandeep and his team are aggregating all of those news event alerts into one spot. They're taking a look at them, and then they are evaluating the impact that it would have on your services with your particular supplier or within the location that you're monitoring. They then take those alerts And then they offer you some guidance around that. They offer you a level of severity, so low, medium, high, or immediate impact. And then they've got the guidance that goes along with it. So that way, not only do you have some great information to go off of, but you've also got some guidance to go off of as well. And so with our real-time event alert service, it's delivered to you via email. So you get an event alert notification into your email box. It has severity levels and guidance. And then something that's really great is that we offer daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual event alert trackers. So all of the event alerts will reside within the platform in the system. And you've got the ability to turn off those email notifications that you're receiving. So, if you've got hundreds of emails coming into your email box on a daily basis, you just turn off those event alert notifications, and then you wait for those daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly trackers to come into your email box. At the end of the day, you can take a look at those trackers, and you've got a consolidated view of everything that's gone on. And on the screen, you've got an example of what these event alert notifications look like. It's easy to share it. You can download it. You can print it in case you need to take it into a meeting that you're going into. But there's lots of functionality and many different use cases for these event alert notifications. And I just want to pause. John or Sandeep and even Joe would love your input on the alerts level service that we offer.
So this is Joe, and I'm a user, and this is something that I look at essentially every day. And there's always good news assessing going on, and this is part of my regular daily activities is to look for this. So again, I know there's certain emails that we dread seeing. I intentionally look for this because if there's anything going on, I expect to see it in this email, and I want to know before any of my clients call me.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Joe.
Yeah, to expand on what Joe is saying, Casey, if you could jump back to slide 15 for a moment.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. That's all right.
Right there.
No, one more. There you go. Remember this slide, folks? And I think Joe just explained that clearly. This is the one that you want to see. So when you look at this and you're going to say, well, okay, I'm vendor risk or I'm procurement. How does this affect me? Well, if there's going to be problems with people getting to work, some of your vendors and your suppliers or your sourcing providers, or if you have a captive in a country, the folks may not be able to get to work. There's going to be a challenge. There could also be a challenge with flights. So, people are traveling. I mean, many of us work for international organizations. When I was at Citi and at DB, and I think Joe and Time Warner, it's not uncommon that you have a couple of hundred people traveling to a city at any given time. So what happens here is that information comes into various team members, and someone in HR and travel may be very interested in this because it's an awareness. So I think that's one of the focuses that we really try and push with our customers, and I think Joe really explained it well, that when it comes in, it's about quickly being able to look at it and then share it. And the system actually encourages the sharing of information. It encourages, and Sandeep and Casey will talk about that a little more, about, if your organization has some form of category management as it relates to sourcing providers, the system is designed for category management because you can take specific vendors or specific locations and have one person or one team look at those while another team is looking at something completely different. And then in the end, every day we give you trackers, which we'll also explain. So that was something quick that I wanted to mention. So I'll turn it back to you, Case, and we can move it forward unless Joe or Sandeep have a further comment.
Appreciate that, John. Thank you very much. So the next level of service is our informational level of service. And really, this is great because it gives you a snapshot of all the data that we use to populate the risk score at the manager level, which I'll talk to you about next. So all of the raw data that Sandeep and his team are gathering to populate those risk scores is available to you. And so this is often used when you're going to market for an RFP and you want to down select a few vendors and you're trying to get a better understanding of who you're going to be going to market with. or if you want to expand to a new location and you want to get a better understanding of the environment that you're going to be going into, that's typically what the informational level of service is. And it's a point in time of information, and it's all the raw data. We give you access to that, and that way you're able to manipulate it and put it into your own models for a point in time of information. John, can you talk about maybe some instances that you think that you've seen in the market that some of our clients have used the informational level service?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are very useful. One of the things, we actually had a conversation with a partner client yesterday. The conversation was about timing. And those of you that are on the line, and you know this, things don't ever happen as quick as we want them to, except especially the good things. The only things that happen really quick are the challenges and the problems. But we were talking about this yesterday, rather in depth, about, as you're going through that RFI process, as you're spending time, and sometimes that can take 2 or 3 months, as we all know, while you're building a business case and so on and so forth. What we have clients do is actually taking this service, and they might pick, 10 vendors that could be the ones that they were thinking about sending an RFI to, and maybe 2 or 3 locations that might be involved. And they'll run the program with those targets, as we call them, targets, for about 3 months, 90 days, 60 days. And what they have the ability to do then is get a feel for the different locations and the different suppliers. And that sometimes can, get you from 10 to 7, or makes you comfortable with the 10 you've picked. And then they'll also monitor them through, as it narrows down, through the RFP process and the ultimate contractual decisioning and implementation. So now it's really giving the user a true picture, a profile to some extent, of that service provider or that location. And the other nice thing is, if it's a target that we've had in the system for a while, you also have the benefit of historical data that would then show transitions or trends. And then you can actually match trends to seasonality, because things do change seasonally with volumes and frequency of reports and so on and so forth. So those are a couple of the things that we've seen our clients use this for in that early decision making process.
And if I have to add another point, this is also very popular with some of our clients who have their own internal risk models that are currently prevailing. And what they need is just the data. And we have an open API that allows them to integrate this information directly into any third-party or in-house developed platform for further analysis and of course reporting however they require internally. Back to you, Casey.
I'm sorry, this is Joe. If I could add one more small tidbit. So for those of you on the line that deal with people who make requests to add locations and add vendors, I've had people say, hey, I went out to golf with someone and they run a firm out of this location. Can we add them as a vendor? One of the good things you can do here is you can actually get a profile and provide a neutral response and say, well, here's what the industry review is of them. And it kind of helps quash the whimsical request when people are getting, those types of requests in. So if anyone on the line gets those types of things and are trying to manage a set of preferred providers, this is also a tool that can be helpful.
Excellent. Thanks for that, guys. And so finally, our manager level service. So this is our all-encompassing level of service. And this includes alerts, raw data, the risk scores that you see here on the screen, dashboards, kind of an overall health scorecard, if you will. It allows you to drill down into each supplier and location and get all of the raw data points that we use to calculate these risk scores. You've got the ability to consume it by downloading the information into a CSV file. You can download it into a PDF report. You can share it with colleagues who might not have access to the tool. We have an open API that you can use to integrate into like a Syrian Labs or an Archer type of tool. And then most importantly with the manager level service is the unlimited access to Sandeep and his analyst team. So what's great about this is that if you've got questions about a data point or something that you've seen going on in the industry, or really any query at all, you've got the ability to email Sandeep or myself and get more information and insights on something that you have a question on. And this is completely unlimited. So and the response time can vary anywhere from just to a couple of hours to 24 hours, depending upon the level of research required. But if you've got, somebody that you need to report to, we can send you a one-page write-up on a topic that you might have. We can send you a graphic PDF or PowerPoint, so that way you can use it at a meeting that you might be going to, but it's unlimited. And then also part of the manager level service is that all of our clients, we do quarterly meetings with them. And so this allows us to sit down with you and talk about some issues that you're facing based on your portfolio of suppliers and locations. You've got the ability to understand what's happened over the last few months and any trends that we're seeing. And then our final quarterly call at the end of the year, what we like to do is really do an all-encompassing, complete, in-depth overview of your entire portfolio of suppliers and locations. Tell you what we've seen over the last 12 months. We like to get your feedback. This is a client co-created tool, and it really gives us the ability to understand what your needs are, where we can improve. And quite frankly, many of the suggestions like the alert tracker came directly from our clients. And so your feedback is greatly appreciated. Joe, I really love to hear your insights and talk for a little bit further on the manager level service and your thoughts around the quarterly calls as well. I know, you've been a great resource in giving us so much feedback over the last couple of years. So if you could provide some insights, that'd be great.
Sure. First on the service as well. One of the things that we do with our key providers is have periodic reviews. Most are quarterly. And one of the things we do as a natural course of business before those reviews is go in and get the latest information as part of this. So we get the updated risk scores and activity and news. So we're well prepared going into our quarterly reviews with our key providers. So that's one thing that we've used this for. In terms of the reviews that we have with the Supply Wisdom team, Casey and others, yeah, I'll say this, absolutely very receptive to any type of suggestions we come up with. We've seen several improvements to the tool that we recommended. So it's a good relationship because they're very much a responsive partner, because I think they view it as if we have a need or a question that other clients of theirs would as well. So it's actually one of the benefits you get in a multi-tenant environment, is that some other company comes up with a good idea and suggests that to Casey, and you don't even know about it, but all of a sudden it comes up as a new feature that you can take advantage of. So that's a benefit of the style of the service that we've come to see over the last few years.
Okay. All right. A couple of things is that you want to keep in mind, folks, is that these features that we're talking about that Casey and Joe and Sandeep have mentioned, it's, like you have full access to Sandeep and his analytical team. That's actually built into the tool. It's not like you have to try and find a name and actually send an email. It's built in. It's called Ask an Analyst. So you have the ability to quickly, when you're looking at something, go right back to the team and ask a specific question about that. The same as with the sharing. The sharing feature is built in. The download features are built in. So those are some of the things you want to keep in mind. And also, as IAOP corporate members, you have a very unique availability to try the tool, to test it with a location, a single location, or a vendor, a supplier. And you want to take advantage of that. You also want to take advantage of a real live demo of how the system works, where you can actually, we take you through it and show you. When Casey mentioned you can drill down, I mean, it's as easy as just, clicking. I mean, you just click through this and it'll, if you see a red target or an orange target or a change, you can click right through it. So what I really want to encourage is that you think about as the next step, actually getting a real live demo of the program. We didn't want to burden everyone with it at this point, but it's an excellent opportunity to see how this very, very unique and sort of one-of-a-kind program out in the industry operates. So, Sandeep, let me turn it back to you.
Thank you, John. All right. I think, these have been great insights. Thank you. But, Casey is the customer experience director. I mean, she heads customer experience program. So, Casey, I think you'll be the best person to take this away.
Excellent. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So, you know, to set up the solution, it's very simple. You know, I know we're here to talk about the corporate member benefit, so let me just approach that topic first. So, all corporate members of IAOP get access to one target or one location for the lifetime of their corporate member benefit. And so it's very simple. If you're if you're interested in learning more about this tool and you think that this might be beneficial to you, you can reach out to me or to Sandeep or to Mike, and we'll set up a time to walk you through a live demo of the tool, and then we can get you and your organization set up with your one supplier or one location. But from a subscription management portion, you know, if you're interested and this is something that you'd like to integrate into your processes, all you have to do is pick your suppliers, pick your locations, let us know what level of service you'd like to access. So if it's just alerts, or if you'd like the manager level access or info level access, you just let us know about that as well. Provide us with a list of those people that you'd like to have access to the information. We set up the account and you are up and running within 24 hours. It's really quite simple. But again, the corporate member benefit is for buy-side members. You get access to any location or any supplier. And if there are any providers on the call, you would get access to one location. Sandeep, that's correct, right?
That is correct.
Excellent.
Okay, so let's talk about where we're going as an industry. I think that you can see the changes that are happening out there right now. We're starting to see on the risk assessment side, as I mentioned earlier, and I think you're all aware of, that there are some excellent tools out there that have streamlined and expedited a very, very cumbersome process. We're starting to work together. I mean, there are good organizations. IAOP is obviously promoting, you know, other solutions that you can use to get you through that risk assessment. But that's sort of changing now. We're starting to see the development of utilities. For example, in the financial industry, they've created something called TrueSight, which is, you know, 5 banks joined together, and they're actually building a utility called TrueSight. And instead of having to do individual assessments, anyone who is a member of that organization would be able to use the assessment that has been done. I think the founding members are JP Morgan, Bank of New York, Wells Fargo, American Express, and why am I drawing, and Wells Fargo. I think that's the last one. Those are the 5. And they're actually offering that service. It's something worth seeing. And there are some others out there. I mean, there are, you know, vendors who are providing sort of a shared service. So that's the direction that the industry is going on, the kind of costly, labor-intensive, time-consuming risk assessment. What the regulators are saying, as I mentioned this earlier, is, you know, your risk assessments are doing well. We've enhanced them, we've improved them. But what are you doing the other 364 days a year for those annual risk assessment targets? What are you doing to monitor them? Are you being aware of this? And I think as we approach the end and we move to questions, Sandeep, I would really like you to just take a couple of minutes, and maybe Joe can support you in that, is to how we've actually seen clients use the intelligence from Supply Wisdom to not only enhance their control environment and their governance environment, but how it's generated, you know, and identified opportunities and accelerated savings or enhancements. So if you could take a minute on that, I think that would be very, very helpful for our partners online.
Absolutely, John. Thank you. So, you know, I can think of multiple occasions and scenarios where Supply Wisdom has helped clients to, you know, identify new areas for expansion, and even, you know, where they've been educated or they've been made aware of some of the new capabilities of their vendors that has allowed them to have these new conversations. Let's look at, you know, a couple of scenarios where there have been significant savings. Now, one aspect is when it comes to doing business with vendors operating from offshore locations. And, you know, a simple example is most of the contracts with these vendors are more than 3 years old. And the fact of the matter is that over the last 3 years, the local currency in most of the offshore hubs have depreciated. against the US dollar, be it in India, be it in Latin America, or any other place that you would like to look at, near shore, offshore, or whatever combination that you would look at. And Supply Wisdom, through its location analysis, captures information related to that. So this has actually allowed a lot of our subscribers at times of renewals to be able to renegotiate pricing in terms of saying that your cost of living allowances or any of the other COLA applications that you have put into the contracts are really not relevant or applicable given the rate at which the currency has been depreciating. That's one. On the other side, when you're looking at vendor capabilities, and this is more so today currently with anything to do with IT, given that there is so much of disruptions and there is access to so much of disruptive technologies out there. So what Supply Wisdom also does is it tracks metrics related to not just revenues and financial metrics of a supplier, but it also tracks information related to, or metrics related to, the way they're managing talent. So through Supply Wisdom, our clients have actually been able to make the connection of how vendors are now using automation and other intelligent solutions to reduce their dependency on a large workforce without compromising on either the quality or in fact, even increasing their productivity, thereby reducing the dependency on large pools. Now, because of this knowledge and because of this information, clients have now been able to go back to vendors and talk about how these benefits could be passed on to them in terms of either reducing costs or applying that increased productivity to their processes. And this is just a couple of examples. Joe, I'm not sure if you have had a situation or an example where this has led to new conversations or savings, but John, I thought I could share this with the team. I'm sorry, with the audience.
Yeah, and this is Joe. The quick thing I'll say is sometimes it saves you time. And I mean that because if things get out in the news, there was one thing about a year ago where one particular provider was being accused of like kickbacks in certain countries. We were able to get the information, understand what the impact really was, and prevent people from going too crazy in terms of the reaction because we understood it better and were able to, damp down some potential concerns that may have taken a lot of time to unwind if they had started. So again, just from a time saving, by getting the right information to the right people quickly, you can help fend off some potential rabbit hole endeavors.
Okay, that's great. I think Casey, I think this went very well. I think a lot of information. And are there any questions? What we'd like to do now is open it up, and Casey will coordinate questions and answers. So I'll turn it back over. And please, folks, jump in if you have a question.
So John, I actually did get a couple questions from the audience. And one of them is, besides enhancing the control environment, how has Supply Wisdom helped users identify and accelerate savings and performance?
Okay. Well, I think Sandeep and Joe mentioned that, and one of the, a real practical situation is we've actually used data. So over a period of time, you might see the revenues of a vendor being stable or increasing, but we're noticing that the profit is going up at a much higher rate or a much more accelerated rate, and we also have reported that their staffing has gone down. They've reduced staffing. Well, that means one of two things are happening. Either they're in trouble and they're getting ready to go out of business, or on the more positive side, they've automated. And they've come up with a more cost-effective way to provide the service that you have been paying for. And as Sandeep and Joe mentioned, some of these contracts have been around a while. So what happens there is you can actually look at that, and that gives you an opportunity to go back and not even wait till the end of the contract. Go back to the client, the vendor, and say, gee, we've noticed you've automated, or you're doing things differently. Could you bring us up to date on that? And a lot of times, if a vendor is comfortable, and I've been on both sides of the equation, if they're comfortable with the contract and service, sometimes they don't even offer the enhanced service. They're afraid that, well, if they show how they're doing it more effectively, that you're going to reduce the value of the contract. So that's just one example. Back to you, Case.
That's a great example, John. Another question that came in: what challenges or roadblocks have Supply Wisdom encountered when trying to standardize across multiple verticals or functions? Also a great question.
I can take that, Casey. So, Supply Wisdom is a 6-year-old product. And over these years, we have evolved, or rather the product has evolved to be able to manage and assess and cover companies and entities across industries, across service sectors, and across sizes. And one of the problems that, as whoever has asked this rightly, there was a challenge in the sense, how are you able to standardize this, given that you have entities working in different industry sectors that are driven by different dynamics. So essentially, the system is designed to be doing assessments based on thresholds. And these thresholds are essentially what we refer to internally as risk thresholds, are driven by market dynamics that are specific to an industry that a particular company operates in. So to give you an example, you may have, as a company, you may be having about a universe of, let's take a typical example of 5,000 suppliers. And this term suppliers could be used loosely, because it could essentially be a combination of partners, service providers, third parties, typical vendors, all of those, right? So you may have a smaller subset within that you consider to be extremely critical. Again, these could be across tiers. So what Supply Wisdom does is, I earlier showed those different categories that are assessed for a particular supplier or even for a particular location. Well, those categories are essentially driven by thresholds specific to the industry segment or the sector that a particular company operates within. So there could be a different threshold for a company that provides IT services, and there could be a different threshold for a company that provides healthcare solutions or financial solutions. And there could be another threshold for a company that provides staffing solutions, because each one of them have different thresholds. However, have different dynamics. However, when it comes to comparative analytics, there are some areas that would still remain the same. For example, financial metrics, be it in terms of revenues, growth, or even profit margins. There are variations to that as well, because there would be a different way that you would be looking at somebody providing financial services versus somebody providing technology services, based on what are the metrics that operate within that industry. I hope that helped. Casey, back to you.
Excellent. John, did you have something to add?
Let me get off mute. I think to wrap the whole thing up is that, the questions were very, very good. And please, folks, if you have additional questions afterward, don't hesitate to send them to Mike and the IAOP team. They'll be forwarded to us, and we'll come back to you with answers. We've talked about benefits. We've talked about sharing information. And as regulations and rules change, companies are going to have to adapt. Something that's really interesting is, think about what's going to happen as we go through the old mandatory drug testing in the financial industry and some other industries, with states that are now starting to legalize the use of marijuana. That's going to have an impact on the panel test. So these are the types of information that we would identify. We'd see that change in a country or in a location, and we would send that in. So that's that sharing of information. That's the cross-functional use. Going way back to the beginning, information, intelligence, knowledge is how we succeed and how we grow and how we improve. But if we don't share that knowledge, if it's not simple to understand, easy to use, and easy to share, we don't gain the benefit of it. And that was the whole concept behind Supply Wisdom, which, as Sandeep mentioned, was built in partnership with clients. It was something that we developed, probably started developing about 8 years ago, and really it continues to grow and expand and enhance. So I encourage everyone to really learn more about this. Are we selfish in that we want to move our product? Of course we are, and our programs. But we also have a commitment to the industry. That's why we belong to a lot of associations. We provide a lot of free advice. There's no cost for that IAOP program that Casey mentioned. It's part of getting it out there, because one thing about risk is it's non-competitive. We need to share, and the more we can do, and the more a user can learn. I think Joe mentioned this also. the advantage of that you get as a user of what other users are talking about. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mike for to wrap this up, and we can then give everybody back a couple of minutes.
All right, great. Thank you, panelists, for all this excellent information, and I thank the attendees for joining us today. We will make a copy of the presentation available to anyone who's interested. And again, if you want further information, you can reach out to me at mike.forbes@iaop.org. And thanks everyone again, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Mike.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Enjoyed doing this. Thank you.